The tragic story of Chevrolet. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word Chevrolet? Well, it's either convenience or speed. Now, the latter might be a bit restrictive, but no one can deny that Chevrolet produces some pretty nice vehicles. However, few could have guessed that behind this amazing brand is a tragic story that served as the foundation of this company. Hello folks, and welcome to another one of our amazing videos. Today we are going to talk about the tragic story of Chevrolet. Now, many of you may be thinking, how can such a successful company have a sad past? Well, you better stay tuned because you are in for some shock. Now let's begin. It all started on Christmas in 1878. Louis Chevrolet, the second child of 9 children, grew up in a modest home and frequently assisted his watchmaker father. Oh, and a fun fact here is that Chevrolet literally translates to goat milk in French. Well, that isn't that surprising when you consider the fact that he was born in an area that was famous for dairy product. Louis was always interested in his dad's business and spent a lot of time there as a kid, learning from him and pitching in whenever he could. The youngster didn't seem to care about schoolwork. Their parents were understandably concerned, but they took comfort in the fact that Louis was always on the lookout for a job so that he could contribute financially to the family. Louis Chevrolet, together with his parents and 6 siblings, immigrated to France as the family's financial situation deteriorated. France was on the cusp of great things at this time, and the country was soon home to numerous groundbreaking innovations that advanced scientific knowledge and modern industrialization. As a result, it was an excellent era for a young person with a penchant for gadgets. Louis immediately dove headfirst into the world full of gears, steam, engines, and wheels. Very quickly after, he found work in a local bike shop. There, he benefited from great teachers and began to understand automobiles, or self-propelled carriages as they were known at the time. The young Swiss man, however, didn't just prove himself in that aspect. After all, wherever bicycles are present, there will also be races. Even in 1895, Louis Chevrolet was able to win a bicycle race in Burgundy, and the news of his victory was noted in a local French newspaper. For Louis, this was the beginning of great things. Over the next 3 years, he competed in dozens of races across France and infected his younger siblings with his enthusiasm. The young man gained from his hobby and passion, and it didn't hurt that it also provided a comfortable income, ensuring the family's continued well-being. Oh, and I almost forgot that the bike he rode in was his own creation. Later, he came up with yet another bike design, this time calling it the Gladiator. It was so impressive that one of the managers of the Duroc automaking plant approached Louis about joining the company. Louis learned everything he needed to know about the 4-stroke engine and internal combustion during his stay in Duroc. Louis Chevrolet gathered enough money to make his long-awaited trip to the United States a reality. Louis had no idea what to expect when he first arrived in the United States. His first stop in the Big Apple was at the De Dion Bouton dealership. After the business closed, Louis had to find another way to make a living, so he worked as a mechanic in a number of different garages and as a driver for affluent families. When he was doing one of these jobs, he met the woman who would become the mother of his 2 sons. Later, through a connection made by Walter Christie, he was hired by the Fiat Representative Office. Chevrolet, however, saw all of this as a springboard for his true passion, racing. Louis' first assignment was a timed event at Morris Park, and he shocked everyone by setting a new world record over 1 mile. In his next major race, he was competing against the top drivers in the country. Louis Chevrolet persisted until he won first prize and was featured on the top page of the New York Times. He continued to race while driving for Buick and became close with the company's owner, General Motors co-founder William C. Durant. Chevrolet's daring and perhaps illogical driving style won over the public and earned him the moniker Crazy Daredevil in the tabloids. Louis spent a lot of time in the hospital due to his injuries from racing, but one thing was certain: he was becoming quite popular. Soon later, he was approached by William Durant, who at the time had been ousted from his company, and he sought to use his image as a daring racer to market a car company that the two of them could lead. It's even said that the disgraced businessman approached Louis Chevrolet, who had no official education, with the idea of designing a new education for the vehicle of his dreams. As Durant himself put it, the original plan for this vehicle was to use a prototype that Durant stole from General Motors on his way out. When asked, Louis enthusiastically accepted and got to work right away. Very quickly, a plan for a 6-cylinder engine with an overhead valve was laid out in front of William, and the businessman fell in love with the idea since it gave him a foot in the door of the automobile industry. The final step in beginning the production of new automobiles was to form a corporation under which they could be sold. Even Durant, who had just proposed that Chevrolet brand new vehicles bear the Chevrolet name, was not doing any serious innovation in this situation. Not surprisingly, Louis enthusiastically accepted this offer. In this way, the Chevrolet Motor Car Company was incorporated in 1911. Louis took on the role of chief engineer for the company. His brother Arthur Chevrolet was also brought on. It wasn't hard to figure out what to do. The Chevrolet brothers handled the vehicle's design, while Durant handled sales. It took several months, but eventually the Classic 6, also referred to as the Type C, was born. The vehicle's highest speed was 65 miles per hour, and it was powered by a 4.8-liter straight-six engine. Few were sold because of its high price tag of $2,250, equivalent to $65,000 in modern U.S. currency. Chevrolet wanted to maintain making quick cars, but Durant wanted them to concentrate on producing a large number of inexpensive vehicles to compete with Ford. Despite the lack of success for this car, Chevrolet was insistent that they should continue with these types of cars. This created a rift between Durant and Chevrolet, and soon things would boil over. While Durant's disagreements typically began over business issues, he swiftly started making personal digs at Chevrolet. For instance, he once chided Chevrolet pretty caustically in front of all the staff at a meeting for smoking cheap cigarettes, something he said no one of his status should be doing. And he also alluded to the fact that it could be time to convert to better cigars. An underlying meaning was implied. It was clear that Durant was trying to send Louis a message that this crude and uncultured European did not belong in the upscale environment of the auto industry. Durant reorganized the corporation without Louis' approval after this friendly disagreement. This, combined with several other remarks about Louis' character, really started to irritate him. Then he did something that could have been the worst decision of his life. Louis Chevrolet gave William Durant his stock in the company. Obviously, Louis did not know at the time that these papers could have made him a multimillionaire. When Durant took over as CEO, he increased the production of affordable cars, which became an instant hit. Chevrolet made a conscious decision to go back into sports and racing at this period. When he met Howard Blood, the founder of the Blood Brothers Machine Company, he decided to work with him to design a new Cornelian racing car, of which just a few hundred would be made. This vehicle, powered by a chain, eventually became one of the smallest racing cars to win major championships. The Cornelian weighed in at a minuscule 500 kilograms. A Stirling engine, which powers the automobile, is a type of external combustion engine that can run on any kind of heat. The rear suspension of this vehicle was also independently mounted. Chevrolet qualified at 130 kilometers per hour for the 1915 Indianapolis Cornelian, the Indy 500, a race over 500 miles. But he was unable to complete the race. Louis dropped to 20th because of a damaged valve. Chevy, though, had no intention of giving his business strategy up that easily. Gaston followed Louis to the United States, and the two brothers established the Froniac Motor Company, where they mass-produced advanced and extremely quick racing vehicles powered by an aluminum cylinder block. The most desired and exclusive race in North America was finally in Louis' hands. Back in 1919, Chevrolet drove the Indianapolis 500 4 times without being caught. The result was a 7th-place win for him. Even Gaston joined in on the fun, and the following year ended up winning the rally. Sadly, a tragedy would occur that would alter the course of their future. During one of his races, Gaston lost control of his car and ended up crashing it, leading to his death. Following the tragic loss of his younger brother, Louis left racing for good. Chevrolet, following the passing of his brother, began to work at Froniac. Unfortunately, Louis' business failed rapidly because he lacked the requisite managerial skills. Chevrolet tried multiple times to launch a brand new automaker, but each time was unsuccessful. The Great Depression compounded Louis' ineptitude as a manager of both people and money. This led Chevrolet to decide to permanently exit the auto industry. The Swiss, French, and American daredevil simply couldn't stand to do anything for very long. After all, he had spent his entire life working with motors. He then turned his attention to aircraft engine development, going so far as to launch a new company that ultimately would meet the same demise. Chevrolet was then forced to resume the work he had done as a young man, which included fixing things like watches and refrigerators. Very soon, fate began laughing at him. Without pity or moral obligation, in 1934, General Motors degraded the man who lent his name to one of the world's most recognizable car brands by hiring him as a low-wage mechanic. This turned out to be the deciding element in Chevrolet's life. He no longer believed in himself or life. After the former racer developed atherosclerosis of the lower extremities, a work-related illness, he was advised against getting behind the wheel. In 1938, he stopped working and set up a house in Florida. Louis's legs ultimately had to be amputated due to the progression of his condition. After that, the 63-year-old Louis Chevrolet lost all hope for the future and passed away on June 6, 1941. The remainder of Chevrolet's days were spent in obscurity and hardship. Unfortunately, the descendants of the legendary racer and vehicle designer would not go on to inherit any money, even if automobiles bearing his name could be seen on the highways of dozens of countries around the world today. All that they have to show for someone who was underappreciated in their lifetime is their big name and a few memories. So that's all the time we have for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon on your way out. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.